It began similarly to other fairy tales created for television. A breakout star who blazed in every scene she appeared in, a dazzling new reality program, and a formidable producer. However, something far more profound was taking place behind. Love and Marriage Huntsville's glitzy advertisements and carefully staged drama. A covert conflict between Melody Shari, who helped make it popular, and Carlos King, its creator. And now the courtroom is the scene of that war. Carlos King was regarded as the creator of Black reality TV for many years. His touch was the strongest. Your face was most likely going to become well known if your name was on his call sheet. He provided viewers with moments that lived rent-free on social media for weeks, along with mess, tears, and betrayal. However, every empire has its weaknesses. Insiders also claim that this one was based on contracts that withheld information, exploitation, and silence. It wasn't intended for Melody Shari to change the course. She was the drama's public face rather than its author. She was watching something else, though, while her fans watched her deal with hustle and heartbreak on screen. How a show she helped start was gradually removing her from the story. How her image was being marketed and how her story was being misrepresented. Why did everything change? A lawsuit, a real one, filed in Fulton County, Georgia. Not some storyline cooked up for the cameras. This wasn't about petty disagreements or behind-the-scenes gossip. This was about forgery, unauthorized use of her name, digital signatures she claimed she never gave, and allegedly forged documents that led to international licensing deals she never signed off on. It was the kind of case that makes even reality TV look tame. When news broke that Carlos King had been arrested for questioning over fraud and identity falsification, the internet cracked wide open. People didn't know what to believe. Carlos, the man who shaped the entire genre. And Melody.com, and poised but never one to play victim, was suddenly being seen in a completely different light. Not just as a reality star, but as a woman reclaiming her power. Dig a little deeper, and the signs were always there. Carlos King did his homework. He knew his wife. Melody had long stopped smiling in interviews where Carlos was mentioned. She pulled back from behind-the-scenes events. She started creating her own content, raw, unedited, and full of the kind of emotion you don't fake for ratings. Fans began noticing she was telling a very different story off camera. A story about betrayal, about being edited to look unstable during her divorce, about not having control over image, and most of all, about being used. Then came the receipts, audio files, leaked emails, clauses, and contracts that didn't match what she remembered signing. Legal filings that claimed her personal moments were stitched into spin-offs she never approved. Her voice is being used in trailers for new cities. Her past was sold like it belonged to the network. And while Carlos denied it all in a 12-minute Instagram live, collected, even a little smug, it didn't stop the damage. Because while Carlos tried to spin the narrative, Melody was already working on something else. She wasn't just suing. She was building, and she wasn't just building to win the case. She was building to take the throne. The lawsuit might have pulled Carlos into the fire. But Melody, she lit the match. And according to people close to her, wasn't about revenge. It was about revolution, new blueprint. And she was writing herself this time. Pen in one hand, evidence. In the other, Carlos King wasn't just a producer. He was a gatekeeper. For over a decade, his name carried weight in casting rooms and network meetings. If you wanted to make it in Black reality TV, odds are you had to go through him. And for the longest time, that worked in his favor. But the moment the charges surfaced, fraud, forgery, identity theft, it wasn't just his reputation on the line. It was the entire foundation of his brand. Carlos did what any seasoned media figure would do. He went live. No press conference. No formal statement, just him, a ring light, and a perfectly curated message. He played the role of the misunderstood creator, claiming this was all a smear campaign. He even threw in a few spiritual quotes for good measure. Said he was being tested, that the incident was a chapter, not the whole book. And while some fans clung to his calm demeanor, others weren't buying it for a second, especially not after. Melody's legal team dropped documents that made jaws drop. One leaked file detailed how her digital signature appeared on a licensing contract for Air Union she never approved. Another showed internal emails from Kingdom Reign Entertainment discussing how to maximize drama from Melody's divorce footage. One producer even suggested recycling a clip of her crying without her consent for a promo. And the kicker: that same clip later showed up in a teaser for Love and Marriage Detroit. Melody didn't say much at first. No dramatic rants, no emotional breakdowns, just quiet, strategic moves. She'd hop on Instagram Live and drop breadcrumbs of quotes about ownership, power, and legacy. Her fans connected the dots. The comment sections turned into many courtrooms, and while Carlos tried to hold the line, the pressure was caving in from all sides. OWN, the network that built an entire franchise around his shows, went completely silent. No statements, no posts, just awkward quiet. Insiders say meetings were happening behind closed doors. Sponsorships began to vanish. One major beauty brand reportedly pulled their upcoming campaign with the franchise. A streaming deal Carlos had with a major platform was put on indefinite pause. And while he was out front doing damage control, the back end of his empire was leaking fast. But this wasn't just about a legal fight anymore. It had become a cultural flashpoint. Women in media, especially Black creators, started rallying around Melody. Amanda Seales reposted her live stream. Tama Mallory, known for her activism, she praised Melody's courage. Even Candy Burus, who had her own rocky past with Carlos over intellectual property, started liking tweets that sided with Melody. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Carlos and Melody. It was about an entire system that many felt was built on exploiting the very women it claimed to empower. Still, Carlos had his defenders. Nene Leakes tweeted in his support, calling him a genius and a hustler. That didn't go over well. People flooded her answers, accusing her of defending the old guard. And then Martel Holt, Melody's ex, jumped in cryptically, saying Carlos always had his back. That single sentence lit up Twitter like gasoline on a flame. Fans dragged him relentlessly, calling it typical, accusing him of siding with the man who profited off Melody's pain. As the court date loomed, the air around the case grew heavier. People weren't just watching to see who would win. They were watching to see who would walk away with the power, because one thing was clear: whatever occurred next would impact reality TV forever. And Melody wasn't just aiming to go away victorious. She was poised to take over, while Carlos King was busy defending himself in court and on camera. Melody, she was quietly making actions that will redefine her entire legacy. She wasn't just fighting a war, she was building a new empire. And the pen was in the hands of no one else this time. The news quickly spread that Melody had filed to start the Shari Media Network, her own production company. But this wasn't just a passion project. It was a direct response to everything she'd been through. A sharp, calculated pivot from star to mogul. Insiders close to Melody described the company as a multi-platform powerhouse aimed squarely at giving Black women a space to tell real, raw, and unfiltered stories. No fake drama, no ulterior motives, only the truth. The blueprint is enormous. A number of written dramas based on actual Black families in the South. The documentary style focuses on healing, entrepreneurship, and motherhood. Talk shows hosted by women who have recovered better after being betrayed. Additionally, Melody herself will host an unscripted competition show for budding female businesses. The tagline: real stories, real healing, real power, real power. But the headline grabber was a multi-part docuseries already in the works, titled Unscripted and Unbothered: The Melody Shari Story. It would pull back the curtain on everything. Her rise to fame, the collapse of her marriage, her legal battle with Carlos, and how she reclaimed control over her narrative. It would include behind-the-scenes footage, court documents, and exclusive interviews. Not a revenge piece, but a reclamation, a full-circle moment. Investors were already circling. BT Plus was reportedly interested in picking up the docuseries as an exclusive. If that deal closes, it would mark a massive shift in the power dynamic of Black reality television, one that Carlos King would be powerless to stop. And Melody knew that. That's why, according to sources, she's also recruiting cast and crew members who were fired or pushed out under Carlos's reign. 2 former Love and Marriage Huntsville faces had already signed on to develop new shows with SMN. Her social media presence is exploding. Scream lives that used to pull 5,000 viewers now draw 30,000. Her YouTube channel gained more subscribers in 3 months than it had in 3 years. She didn't beg for interviews. Media outlets started calling her Essence, the Shade Room. Even people began running profiles about her transformation. They weren't talking about Melody, the reality star. They were talking about Melody, the visionary. Meanwhile, the silence from OWN said everything. They hadn't cut ties with Carlos publicly, but behind the scenes, sources claimed the network was weighing its options, replacing Carlos, cutting a quiet settlement with Melody, maybe even rebooting the franchise under new leadership. Nothing was confirmed, but the buzz was loud enough to hear. Carlos, for all his posturing, was losing ground fast. His following projects were on hold. Public trust was shattered. Brands didn't want their name anywhere near him. And no matter how many times he tried to reframe the story, people weren't listening like they used to. Because Melody's story wasn't simply more fascinating, it was more honest. That truth resonated. What started as a lawsuit has become something more, a reckoning, a change of power. A woman was once edited for drama, had become the editor of her own future. Melody didn't simply uncover the holes in Carlos King's empire. She stepped right through them and started making her own, nor for ratings, nor for retribution, but because she realized the worth of her voice.